Thank you for joining our webinar. Today we're talking about how important it is for private schools to communicate effectively with their various constituencies about their plans for the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll be sharing insights into how private schools can communicate their reopenings and operating plans and quickly adapt should circumstances change. I'm Sean Murphy. I have 25 years of experience working on major crises, including CSI's current work with various companies on their responses to COVID-19. As everyone knows, this situation is unprecedented in modern times, and it requires specific knowledge and expertise. For example, some of our clients are dealing with fatalities related to the pandemic, and it has been critical that they communicate effectively to employees, customers, and other important stakeholders. There's no doubt that COVID-19 is an emotionally charged issue. There are sharp divisions in the United States about how to best respond to this crisis, and schools have very specific issues to contend with. Polling shows that most parents are torn between allowing their children to return to school and a somewhat normal routine, or preferring distance learning to keep them safe at home. Teachers have a lot to be concerned about, including their own safety and the safety of their families. They're also concerned about the well-being of the children they teach. Across the country, school teachers are being vocal and having an impact on how their school districts address safety issues. Part of the concern is the reality that kids will be kids and not social distance or wear masks. We're seeing this in colleges where even COVID-19 positive students are having on-campus parties. It's especially difficult to communicate when there is no end in sight to the pandemic, and when outbreaks have become common when people start to gather indoors. People are on edge because their lives have been completely disrupted, and achieving any semblance of normal is challenging as it is. There's a lot at stake for private schools, including their reputations. That means how they manage a crisis and how their actions impact relationships with key stakeholders. For example, schools are institutions, and it's important that parents can trust what the school administration is telling them about their plans and the safety of their children. This is especially true now because the crisis has been politicized and people are searching for credible information. Also, parents don't want a repeat of last winter when school was abruptly halted. The private schools where they send their children have had time to prepare for any contingency, and parents need to be informed and prepared for those contingencies. And there are related questions that parents are beginning to ask. For example, why they're having to pay full tuition for an online education. If your school is virtual, how are you anticipating and answering these types of questions? As we mentioned, it's critical that the school administration and teachers are aligned around the same goals and there's buy-in for how to prepare the school to operate during a pandemic. Otherwise, there's a risk of mixed messages where the school administration is saying one thing and teachers are saying another. Communication plays a vital role in keeping teachers and the administration aligned. It's also critical that the school administration deal effectively with community leaders. We've learned from other situations that it's necessary to keep local health officials and elected officials informed of your plans and any issues that may arise. School administrators may need their support and cooperation in dealing with those issues. And we've all seen the viral videos of schools that have not enforced social distancing and mask wearing and the impact on the trust parents and the community have in the school and its administration. School reopening plans have to anticipate every major scenario, from best to worst. But those plans alone aren't enough. Each needs to be accompanied by a communications plan so that the key audiences, parents, students, teachers, and the community, are fully informed. This is how you build trust during a crisis, by showing that you're prepared and can communicate quickly and effectively so that others don't fill the void with misinformation. If you don't communicate and control the narrative, others will. Preparation is key. Also, since this is a highly emotional issue, school administrators need to recognize that their messaging must also address how their constituents are feeling. Empathy and listening are critical. Unfortunately, some leaders fall into the trap of believing that they can take a quote unquote common sense approach when responding to a crisis. Unfortunately, that doesn't work because common sense usually translates to defending your position. That turns people like parents off because it shows you're not listening to their concerns. Every private school needs messaging for every scenario it has planned, and that messaging must address the perspectives and priorities of parents, students, teachers, and the community. We've developed 6 communications priorities every school should follow as part of their reopening and operating plans. This is based on the COVID-19 crisis work CSI has already done. The first is to use some rigor around your messaging so you can break through the emotional clutter that surrounds COVID-19. And there are efficient and effective ways to do this. CSI routinely uses proprietary psychological techniques to develop an effective narrative that both informs and persuades key constituents to action. The key is to listen to your constituents and address their concerns. The language and words you choose make a difference. Second, especially in the early days of the pandemic, we saw numerous companies and organizations tell their constituents, your health and safety is our top priority. Our experience shows that that kind of broad statement is risky from a potential litigation standpoint and also doesn't help with credibility. A school's top priority is to provide education. It should do that safely, and your messaging should address specifically how you're doing that. It's a critical difference. And your messaging should be consistent in every communication, from emails to parents to what your spokesperson tells the media. Third, especially since the first shutdown and quarantine were so abrupt, parents and teachers need to know that the school administration has thought through the various contingencies and has plans for each. More important, they need to know what those plans are and how they will affect their lives. Actively communicating these plans underscores the school administration's competence, helps with buy-in, mitigates the potential for misinformation, and keeps you in control of the narrative. Also, guidance from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, OSHA, and other authorities is continually evolving as we learn more about the novel coronavirus and COVID-19. It's critical that the school administration stay up to date in terms of its planning and practices, and that your messaging evolve to reflect current knowledge. Again, this helps underscore the administration's competence and builds trust. Another priority is for the school administration to regularly share updated information and reminders for how students, their families, and others can help contain the pandemic and community spread through their personal behavior. We have seen this work with companies that are trying to reinforce safe behaviors at home so people don't show up to work sick. These companies offer apps and other regular ways of communicating to provide information on how to prevent the virus's spread, and they report seeing a decrease in infections. Lastly, it's important that school administrators don't get caught in their own bubble especially when communicating with their constituents. This is an extraordinary situation, and a lot is on the line. It's best to work with professionals who have specific experience dealing with and communicating about COVID-19. Look for advisors who can bring insight based on their real experience with the pandemic. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions or would like a complimentary consultation regarding your COVID-19 communications plans and messaging. And thank you for participating in our webinar.